be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. If there are any public comments, unnoted, we're ready to begin. Instructional Council, correct?
Good morning. Yes, my name is Jonathan Harper, and Science Curriculum Supervisor. Good morning, Reverend Matthias, Ms. Slade, and Ms. Downs-Lewis. Thank you for having us here this morning. It's good to see you. So we'll have a report from Instructional Council from Mrs. Reagan, and then reports to the board will include priority schools given by Mrs. Cheney, and then a report on suspensions by Natasha Neal and Mel Atkins, and again a report on PBIS and restorative practices also from Natasha Neal and Mel Atkins. So, Mrs. Reagan.
Just so that it's on the record, Mr. Ross texted me this morning that he would not be able to be here due to a meeting conflict. So he did. He's going to pay dearly, isn't he? Need to make something up for him.
Well, good morning, Reverend Matthias, Ms. Slade, and Ms. Lewis. My name is Pat Reagan. I'm the school reform facilitator for Grand Rapids Public Schools and a member of the Instructional Council. Our brief report this morning is about the first meeting of the Instructional Council that took place this year on Thursday, December 14th from 1 to 3 p.m. at Southeast Career Pathways. This year we are meeting at Southeast Career Pathways due to construction at GRPS University. During this first meeting, the following items were included in the agenda and discussed by all members present. We had introductions of new and returning members. We discussed the purpose of Instructional Council. We reviewed the process, timelines, and communications, and the GRPS approved syllabus template that administrators, teachers, and curriculum specialists use to design new courses. There was a consideration of forming subcommittees, and that's still under conversation. We discussed the timeline for courses to be made available for student selection during the school year 2018-2019, and the timeline for reporting to this Academic Achievement Committee of the board. There was a discussion of the appointment of the Instructional Council chairperson for 2017-2018. GREA chairs the council this year. All members agreed that it's important to clarify timelines in the process for developing and presenting new proposed courses, and that a clear communication to the system as to how courses get to Instructional Council is communicated. We had two courses that were presented for support. The first one was from Ryan Huppert, principal at City High Middle, and Kurt Ridsley, science teacher at City High. The title of the course is IBDP, Environmental Systems and Society.
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. It's the IB, or an International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, Environmental Systems and Societies. This is an additional science course for City High to expand on the traditional science courses of biology, chemistry, and physics that are taken. Students at City High need to take 4 years of science, and many students who begin in middle school at City often need a unique course towards the end of their school career. This one is kind of exciting. It's very lengthy and very in-depth, but it includes earth science, environmental studies, some sustainability, and some social studies within the course, because it will deal with systems regarding sustainability and basically where our world is with science and where we're going. In addition, there was a course presented by Maggie Malone, Director of Fine Arts. This one was design thinking and problem-based learning that would incorporate STEAM, arts, and 21st century technology skills for students. Both courses were supported by Instructional Council, but they will be taking those courses back and adapting those courses to the structure and format of the GRPS syllabus template. Our next meeting for...
I'm sorry, just a couple
Sure.
of questions.
Yes.
So on some of these, both of these courses, how, projecting forward, how does that help our students in regards to, for example, the AP tests, especially for city kids, and meeting some of the college credits, and then what Ms. Malone suggested in terms of creative problem solving? How does that help them be prepared for college, or even meeting a college course, let's say, I don't know if it's English 101 or something like that? How does the council deal with some of those?
With the IBDP course, that course is particular to, and I'm going to ask Jonathan Harper to make sure that I articulate the response correctly, but this is in particular preparing students for the IB assessment.
Yeah. So the IBDP Environmental Studies program would be, again, as Mrs. Reagan said, a fourth-year course for diploma program students at City High Middle, and it would be directly related to their exit diploma
Correct.
exam. So and the team there at City has done a very thorough job of planning and preparing for this course to offer as just another step in the diploma program process for IB at City.
And from what I understand this morning, students are very excited about this. It will be a brand-new course with an opportunity for students to continue this learning over 2 years.
That's great, thank you.
And the design thinking course is, as soon as it is in full format, it would be interesting to take a look at some of the engaging projects that students are doing, and it really parallels with the backwards design work that we're doing with our curriculum this year. So our next meeting is scheduled for next week, Thursday, January 25th, from 1 to 3 p.m. at Southeast Career Pathways. And at this time, we're expecting a presentation on the new teacher cadet program and the introductory course that is intended for Innovation Central in the fall. The co-chair for GREA this year are Laura Morrison and Aaron Purdy, and I'm presenting this report on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Reverend Matias, Ms. Slade, Ms. Downs-Lewis. Good to see you this morning. And let's see. Hopefully you can see that in your packet, projected for the people back here. So this is a priority school summary report compiled for today's meeting, and there are not a lot of changes from the last time this presentation came before you. However, we are excited about the removal of Coit and Dickinson from the priority schools list since the last time we met. So that is the only change to this slide right here. The rest are the removed schools that happened in January 2017, 2016, and then Coit and Dickinson again, that were removed October of 2017.
So the asterisk, can you just explain what?
Absolutely. So if it has one asterisk next to the school's name, then it was removed in January of 2017.
Okay.
And if it has two, then it was removed the year of 2016.
Okay, all right.
I know, isn't that exciting? We have two remaining
That's great.
schools on the priority list, Alger Middle, and that was designated in 2012, and Ken O'Shea Park Elementary, which was designated in 2014. M-STEP scores, and this I know you saw last time, but we don't have any other more current M-STEP scores than when I was here before. So it's the 2016 to 2017 growth in M-STEP language arts, English language arts, and math. So you can see the scores, 2016 listed first on the left, and then 2017 listed on the right for each respective area.
So Alger Middle has moved from 1% of the kids being qualified?
Proficient, yes, absolutely. In math, they had 1% of their students that were proficient in math and in 2016, and they remained at 1% in 2017.
And so are the 5 to 7, are those the goals then?
That is the English language arts proficiency.
Okay, and the
So they had 5% proficiency in 2016 and 7% proficiency in 2017.
All right, I see, okay.
The strategies that are employed to address the deficit areas and to increase proficiency on the M-STEP, of course, for Alger Middle, they are continuing their work with Dr. Holly and Culture and Climate, close and critical reading, and quality questioning. For Ken O'Shea, they are also working on quality questioning, universal design for learning, and student engagement. Those are the three big bucket items that were listed in their priority plan, and they continue to tweak them as they learn more each year, deepen that work.
So when you say for Elder Culture and Climate, what are
Sure.
some of the examples that you can give in terms of how you're making those adjustments in order to meet some of those goals?
Sure. So within the culture and climate, they have done a lot of work around the student engagement piece of it, how to engage students in the classroom instead of removing them. So creating lessons that are inclusive of technology to one degree, and then also just making sure that the rigor, the academic rigor is there. So students are being challenged and that word being sent out. A couple of other things that they're doing with culture and climate relates to the whole school as far as the social emotional learning pieces and PBIS, positive behavior intervention support. They have their structure for that in place as well. Supports that are put in for the schools, our new CAST process and site visits that has begun this year. And Alger and Ken O'Shea are both CAST schools. And
Could you tell me what CAST means?
Sure. Critical, oh goodness. I knew I should write that down too. Thank you, administrative support team. I had it this morning, I just lost it now. So it's a team of people put together that can help remove any obstacles or barriers within the schools, that the schools say, we need assistance with this, or we've tried this, do you have another idea for us? Anything like that. Additional professional learning time is provided for Alger and Ken O'Shea through the Regional Assistance Grant funding, and focused instructional learning cycle process is also in place. That isn't anything that's new. We're continuing forward with that and making sure that we are tracking and progress monitoring students' progress in the curriculum.
Are parents involved in CAST, or is that more,
They are not.
The district approach? Okay.
It's an internal team aimed at supporting the school from the central office perspective. So how we monitor progress within the schools, we have CAST visits, and walk-through debrief sessions are held with the building leader to see how things are going, what things are working, and what we need to refine when we help support through the administrative team that walks through. Instructional learning cycle document is completed and reported out 3 times per year. And the state priority reports are compiled and uploaded 3 times per year as well.
Now, when will the kids get the MAP test? Are they getting it again now in January?
It's about to begin.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes, it is about to begin that. Last week in January, first 2 weeks in February.
And so then we'll have those scores to compare. And they come rather quickly, don't they?
They do come rather quickly. As soon as the window closes, they're usually up 24 to 48 hours as far as the reports are concerned, but students receive immediate feedback.
Okay.
Test.
So would the parents receive a readout or printout that the kids improved and so on? Okay.
Yes, at the winter parent-teacher
Conferences,
conferences.
yeah, okay,
Yes,
good.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And then I know one of your questions was, how can the board support? And truly, we appreciate it when you celebrate with us the student and school progress, because there have been tremendous gains made, and it's exciting for the schools, the district, parents, and students. So celebrate with us when those gains are made, please. And please look forward to our students' continued success. We're seeing great things in the building. We're excited about it. And also, if you could continue to champion our students and staff in the community as you do, your support is greatly appreciated.
Now, is this the group of people, of administrators that is looking at the students who, except for maybe 1 or 2 questions wrong, would have been qualified? This is the group?
That is a
Okay.
piece of the work, of course. Yes, that is a piece of the work.
So how is that going?
It's going well. It is going well. We have teams comprised of cross-role groups that have been meeting with one another and then traveling to assigned buildings and having those conversations with the school leaders and with one another, and it's going well so far. We are into our 2nd round of visits right now, so definitely getting out there more.
Okay, good.
And I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's me.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Once again, I'm Mel Atkins, Executive Director of Community and Student Affairs, and we have Tasha Neal
Student Reform Supervisor.
here, and we're going to talk about, give a update, start out with suspensions. So what we did is we're going to compare the suspensions through the winter break for the last 2 years, and so we figure that's the closest kind of apples-to-apples comparison that we can give today. When looking at that, I'm going to start out with some good news, saying the overall number of suspensions through the winter break is 7.2% lower. You know, we know any suspension is too many, but we have some, but it's lower. And the numbers, to give you a raw number, last year at the same point, at the winter break, same point in time, there was just over 2,400 suspensions. I'm sorry, just over 2,600 suspensions, and this year is almost 200 less than that. And the number of suspension lasting either more than 10 days or 10 or less days, both of those numbers have decreased. I want to highlight the one that lasted in long-term suspensions, lasting more than 10 days, so that's significant. And that was a 40% reduction in chronic absenteeism. I'm sorry, a 40% reduction in long-term suspensions. And later on, Tasha's probably going to talk a little bit to why we think
good.
it's significantly increasing. And then you see that the average length of suspensions has decreased from 5.1 to 4.1 days. And so if you add up those three categories, long-term, short-term, and the length are all going in the right direction. And then the number of students suspended 1 or more times and the repeat offenders have both increased as well when you're comparing the two time periods. But when you look at the suspension a little bit deeper, it is, this graph is alarming in the sense that
Yes.
how you read it is, what it's showing you, African Americans has been suspended 60.7% of the time, but African American students make up about 32% of the population. So there is a gap. This is, say, probably consistent with some past data we have looked at. And then they're comparing it for example, Hispanic students suspended 19.1% of the time, and they make up almost 37% of the population. It is just to give a contrast.
So our students with IEPs, 38.4% of suspensions, of our suspensions are of our students with IEPs, and 33.4% of those suspensions are students who have emotional impairments. We are still keeping our eye on our suspensions with students with IEPs, because we know our students with IEPs, they need support in the building, they need support in the classroom, and we have to keep a close eye on these numbers, not just because the state is also watching, but because it's also the right thing to do and it's the right way to support our students. And 37.7% of the suspensions of students with IEPs are actually coming out of the categorical classrooms. Right. So the data has lifted up a few questions that we need to dive deeper into and make sure that we get an accurate picture of what's actually going on in the buildings and in the classroom so we can better support students and staff.
So are these teachers or teams looking at how they either doing social emotional or looking at how they structure their classes so that because in these classes you tend to know your students. Mm-hmm. You tend to know whether they're mm-hmm. early to mm-hmm. get frustrated mm-hmm. Throughout the day or later, and so it helps to know when to change up things. Are those the kinds of things that you're alluding to? Or?
Absolutely. I think it's going to take a deep dive to figure out what is really going on in the classrooms, and it could be something that's technical as staffing. We didn't have staff available, or it could be processes and procedures. It could be sort of the culture and the mood of the classroom. So I think that we have to go case by case and really figure out what's happening in these classrooms.
It'd be interesting to know a little bit, too, of some of the schools that receive support, like either KSSN or some of the other supports that we get from the community, the Y, and things like that are partnering with our, our schools that are struggling in these areas.
Absolutely. Right now, we're seeing a trend of our male students are being suspended at a higher ratios, about 14 to 5.
Is that significantly different than in the past? I mean, that's normally males are suspended.
Yeah, normally the males are suspended higher. Mm-hmm. I'm saying in the past, they've been like 12 to 5.
Mm-hmm. It's a little higher. The ratio's a little higher this year. 7th grade has the highest percentage of students suspended. That's normal. Yeah. Some middle schoolers are tricky. They are tricky. And for our high school suspensions, just so you guys know, when you see 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, those are based on credits, not cohorts. Mm-hmm. And so for some of our 9th graders, you might have Froshmores or, students who are credit deficient in that group. Our top 3 violations: disruptive behavior, fighting and physical aggression. Physical aggression is actually a new category that was added for those instances that don't rise to the state threshold of physical assault.
What's the difference between fighting and physical aggression?
So fighting is typically when you have two parties who are both engaging. Physical aggression is usually more one-sided than the other.
So talking back or
Could be
sort of
threat.
don't
It could
touch
be-
me.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to note here is what you can't do is just like add up those numbers and get to the bottom number. Because sometimes on more than one occasion, what you see is a suspension that has like 3 different things on it. It could be disruptive behavior, insubordination, and X.
Now, do we share some of this information with our parents? So if I had a child, let's say at Westwood, I was a parent at Westwood, and you at a parent meeting came and said, hey, we want to share some things about what's going on at Westwood. How do you think parents would, or do we share that information, or how would parents respond to knowing some of to know either that there's a lot of disruptive behavior, for example, or other things like that? How would they respond, or how?
It's interesting that you bring that up because we've been working with Scholastic in strengthening our family engagement. And one of the things that is sort of triggered in my mind was how do we leverage strong parent relationships as sort of a behavioral intervention. And so that's something that I'm starting to now research and to think about and talk with building principals about utilizing parent engagement and family engagement as a way to sort of disrupt some of the patterns of behavior that we're seeing in the building. Because I think that our parents are a very strong resource that we can utilize.
And a lot of our buildings also, after suspensions, and they have a parent meeting before the student comes in that first day back to try to get on the same page, try to be a team of one. And we know when you have these type of behaviors, it's really just a signal for something else. And it's us as adults just try to figure out what that is.
And one of the things that we've started to do is we have started to hold meetings with parents, administrators, a supportive person in the building with students who have multiple short-term suspensions because we were capturing the students who were put up for long-term suspension in sort of a hearing, but we had a lot of students who were sort of repeated short-term suspensions, and so we're piloting at Alger. We have 3 this week, wherein we'll bring the student, the parent, someone who will be a support in the building, along with one of our hearing officers, to basically talk about a plan of how to improve behavior, a plan of how, the building and the student will interact, and the parent is part of that, coming up with a plan of success for the student.
Do these all include special ed kids too?
They do. And we have invited special ed staff for those students who have IEPs. But we continue to train our staff in restorative practices. We have had an increase of staff utilizing restorative practices. We will be training 30 additional people this spring who will be certified to facilitate restorative practices circles and conferences. But we're still utilizing our team class on Saturdays with security. We're utilizing our in-house rooms at Alger, Riverside, Union, and Ottawa. And we are continuing to deepen our learning and social emotional learning to make sure that our students and our staff have the social emotional skills to make sure that our students sort of, our genius is unlocked and not dampened in any way. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Who are notable schools that we're struggling with?
That's a good question.
And so, let me start with some positive ones first, and then I can go to the schools that, still see some challenges around reducing suspensions at least. And so campus elementary has it's been one this semester, this first semester, I would say. Union High School, along with newcomers, Beltline, Dickinson, C.A. Frost, Stocking, Sherwood, Innovation Central, and Congress are the schools that have seen some decreases in the number of suspensions when comparing one year to the next. And then you have schools that kind of are similar to the previous year. And then some schools that we're trying to take a deeper look at to see kind of what's going on, what supports they need, include Aberdeen, UPrep, Shawmut Hills, Museum, Montessori High, Brookside, Burton Elementary, Ken O'Shea, Riverside, and Casey.
These are schools that
That we want to take a deeper dive and say what supports.
Could it be like, just from my own personal experience, like at Aberdeen, they have a lot, I think they have 4 or 5 classrooms that they have not had in the past with kids who are autistic. Did that change in student body? Could that make the difference, or that
That-
isn't?
Yep, that could be the difference. At
You know what?
So as we
There's a lot of yellow.
as we dive into the buildings, we would pull a report to see exactly who. So right now, we're just looking at raw numbers, but if we were to pull Aberdeen's suspension report, we could actually see names, we could see behaviors, we could see comments, and that would give us a picture of what actually is going on in the building. And we would talk to the principal because, numbers doesn't tell us everything. There are other things that are going on in the building that we can't tell just by looking at the data.
And then you're referring to like the Swiss data that you guys collect?
So we're talking about our Swiss data, we're talking about our suspension data. We use our incident reports. So we use a few different things to gauge culture and climate in the building.
Well, I would add, I know Bridget mentioned our CAS teams too. And part of the CAS structure is an academic component, but it also is a social and emotional component too. And so buildings, we're a pretty big system, and buildings may need a single point of contact really to say, what about this PD? What about this support?
Yeah.
All right, let me walk through this, and it can be as big as something or as small as something. It's just, our job for central office to try to remove those barriers.
What kind of opportunities are there? Are there lots of opportunities for teachers who may struggle with discipline and so on? Lots of opportunities for professional development and so on? I mean, or just non-tenured teachers, or tenured teachers too? Anyone can choose to do that?
So we have the new teacher series of professional development that does include cultural competency, it includes restorative practice, it includes PBIS, and it includes sort of a classroom management component. But we also have those classes that are available and just sort of out there for folks to enroll in, to learn more about building relationships with students and how to manage your classroom. And each building has a PBIS team. And what we've started with PBIS is, okay, so we've been doing Tier 1 PBIS for a while. It's time to step up to Tier 2 and start identifying those students who need a little more intensive intervention, sort of with the celebrations and the tickets, those students that's not quite working for them. What do we do next for this next tier of students? So that's our next phase of PBIS.
We also have a team that goes into the building or the classroom outside of the PD hours, and they give PD during that time. And so some people, it helps because it makes a lot of sense on the outside, but when they get into the classroom or get into the hallway or into the transitions, they say, this is how it happens. So we do that as well.
There's plenty of professional development available for teachers who want to learn how to discipline appropriately and those kinds of things.
And part of what we also are starting to learn, and things are starting to coalesce, is that discipline and intervention are not two separate things. They're part of the same continuum. And so as we talk about discipline, we can't talk about discipline without talking about intervention and strategies. And so that's one thing that we are starting to marry quite a bit.
And when you mentioned these schools that have slipped somewhat from last year, would it be just like 2 or 3 different kids? And so just a few numbers as opposed
Right.
Yeah, and some of these schools, I mean, they were very low last
Very
year. They're just, it just depends what your starting point is.
Right.
I mean,
So, right, you have buildings who suspended maybe 1 student last year, and this year they've suspended 3 students. So it looks like, right.
it's not.
This is just raw numbers. Again, we have to, dive deeper and get to get the real picture.
I think what I'm encouraged about is the fact that you're able to look at information data, you're able to assess kind of the social emotional of what's in a particular school. I like the fact that you can differentiate between schools, and it's just not this pot of schools, but we can say this particular school really struggles, and we see because we have the data, and then responding, as Catherine was alluding to, opportunities for teachers and parent involvement is critical, and I think most parents want safety for their kids at school, and whether their kid is directly involved or not, they hear, and usually by the time it gets to them, it's worse than what
Absolutely.
the incident was. And so we know that there could be a lot of misconceptions about what happened a particular day or among students. And so I think for us as a board, really being able to look at how you're looking at information and then beginning to address it, because I think a lot of the pieces are there, the PBIS, the PALS, the Swiss data that you guys have. A lot of really key information is there that for an urban school, it's nice to be able to have at our fingertips and then continue to address it. So I really appreciate that. And it's a tough arena. This arena to address is tough, so.
Matias and members of the board, if I can add, just hats off to the principals, because they really are working hard to try to understand the data, and that's one of our big threes. One of our strategies is really to understand. By talking to the principals, looking at Swiss data, we found that we had a gap during recess, right? So kids were outside, but years ago, apparently we reduced the dollar amounts that we were paying teachers to go out for recess. And so we were at the mercy, basically, of just the principal or the principal and a couple of volunteers. By looking at this data, we found that was a gap. So we put $480,000 in the system to pay teachers so that they could go outside, because that's where some of this behavior was happening. And so we're hoping that next semester we will see a decrease, especially around kids just playing rough at recess.
Yeah.
We're also able to do a deep dive with Swiss to see, is it happening in between class passing time? Is it in a certain classroom, a certain teacher, a certain hour? What's going on? And so we're able to peel this back now to really look at, to find the strategy that works best for helping these students and teachers as well. But again, the principals, they've done a great job in just sharing where they felt the gaps were, and sure enough, obviously, the data just supported that, and so we responded very quickly by putting additional resources in the buildings.
No, I'm very impressed with the CAST, even though I didn't know what it meant. I had heard about the philosophy, and I thought that was really good, so that individual schools or principals have sort of a line between them and maybe the school board or the entire administration, but just somebody to help them focus and find these kids that just need that little push, and they'll behave better and they'll do better in school, and it's tough business.
So the CAST is one of the intervention programs that I've created here in the district, and it's led by me. And so it's not a connection with the school board, I want to be real clear. It really is a critical friend vehicle for principals to have someone to talk to them and to show them and just ask those critical questions, because many times that's what's missing. We are being trained by Cambridge University as well as ASCD, the knowers from across the country, because we need to learn. We know there are certain pitfalls that people that go in to help, right, fall in every single time, and we want to avoid that. So we're looking at how to avoid these pitfalls. I'll be going to Burton today as one of my teams. But we're studying a couple times a month, but in addition to that, then we're talking to principals, and it's not an evaluative measure at all. If necessary, we will ask the principal to take their hands off the wheel and let us just steer it for a minute. But it's having that critical friend to ask, what do I do about this? Not only that, but to say, you know, I'm struggling because I don't have teachers. And that's causing these numbers to go kind of haywire. So it's looking at those children that are right in the middle, but it's also looking at structures in place from central office, right? And it's giving people the voice to say, if I had this, I could do more. It's really an old model from back in the day from Phil Runkle that we learned, right? It really isn't anything new. It's just breaking the system down in small bits with 3 or 4 people that these principals can lean on so they have better access to me and to the system.
And then I know that you mentioned policy changes. So what have you been able to glean in terms of bringing to the board and saying, hey, we need to really look at
Great question.
how we have these policies in place because either they're not working or they're archaic or...
One of the things that really helped was the change in the zero tolerance policy. It gave us much more autonomy and much more leeway to say, we don't have to put the student out for 180 days because there are other cofactors involved, and we don't think that the student should be out of school for 180 days. It's not the best for them. And so we have been able to use our discretion on a case-by-case basis regarding suspensions and expulsions and what to suspend for. So that was extremely helpful for us in changing our policy.
And another one I would add that's going to be coming to you fairly soon is around attendance. And so we are in the process of adopting a countywide Strive for 5 campaign, the campaign that, we started with Believe to Become. And in looking at that, we discovered that how we calculate chronic absenteeism is very different how the other 20 districts here calculate chronic absenteeism. And one of the things that we're going to be bringing to the table is around suspensions. And so before, we would say you're suspended, but also it's counting against you as it relates to attendance and chronic absenteeism. And we're the only district in the county that does that. And so we're going to say, let's align it so it doesn't double count against you. Because you're telling me that I can't come. And so that's one of the policy changes that we're going to bring to the table pretty soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes our meeting. We're adjourned.